welcome to my June reading wrap up. You guys know the drill. Today we're going to be talking about the books that I read in the month of June. So this month I managed to read 4 books. I was really hoping to finish reading June 1st, which is actually what I'm currently reading right now, but that book is 500 pages and I'm 100 pages in, so unfortunately I will not be including that book in this video because I don't think I'm going to finish it, even though I'm filming this a little bit before the end of June. But anyways, let's talk about the 4 books that I read in the month of June. So the first book that I have here is Hook, Line and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. This is the second book following from It Happened One Summer, but this one is following the two side characters from the first book, Hannah and Fox, and this is a friends to lovers romance. They kind of start off as long distance because Hannah is in LA and Fox is in the small town of Westport, Washington, and they have been like texting back and forth for the last couple of months since Hannah went back to LA, and her job is a production assistant, and she basically pitches this idea to the director to have their upcoming film filmed in Westport. So then she's back in the small town of Westport and she actually has to be roommates with Fox while she's staying there for like 2 weeks or 2 months or something, I can't remember. They are super close, they're like besties. They end up obviously falling in love. The only thing is Fox has always been this player. He doesn't do relationships or settling down or anything beyond hooking up, and Hannah's always been this relationship girly, and they also don't want to ruin their friendship. This book was honestly so fun. It was so sweet. I loved this small town. This was one of my favorite small town settings. One thing I really did love about Hannah and Fox is that they connected a lot through music, because Hannah is a huge music buff and both of them got along really well when it came to, like, they had music as like a big thing in their friendship and relationship. Definitely not as good as It Happened One Summer, but still a good book, which I rated 4 stars. I do definitely recommend this one. The other book that I have here is When in Rome by Sarah Adams. This one is also a small town romance, and it's Grumpy Sunshine and One of Us is Famous. We follow this singer named Amelia. She is about to go on tour, but she's kind of wanting to clear her head and get away for a little bit. So she ends up taking her car out and driving to this small town in Rome, Kentucky. Then her car breaks down in front of this pie shop owner's house named Noah, and Noah is like super grumpy. He's like super closed off and reserved and doesn't want anything to do with Amelia, doesn't really want to get close to her or anything. But while her car is getting repaired for 2 weeks, he offers his guest room for Amelia to stay in, and obviously you know where the story progresses from there. They end up getting really close, and I just loved the wholesome, sweet vibes in this book. This book was just major cozy vibes. I loved the small town. I loved the side characters. And this book reminded me so much of the Hannah Montana movie for some reason. Like, the entire time that I was reading this book, I kept picturing Amelia as Miley Cyrus because the book gave me Hannah Montana vibes. Even though there's not too many parallels between the two, but it kind of reminded me of that. And I love the fact that even though this is more of like a sweet rom-com type of book, the main characters Noah and Amelia actually had a lot of emotional depth to them, and you get to find out more about their backgrounds. It's also dual POV as well, which I absolutely loved. And there's also no spice. So this is new adult, but there's like no spice. It's just mainly wholesome, fluffy vibes, and I absolutely loved that. It was just a good time reading this book. I ended up actually finishing this book in a whole day because it was so good. But I did rate this one 4.5 stars. Mr. Wrong Number by Lynn Painter. This is her new adult romance, and it is brothers, best friend and enemies to lovers. We follow Olivia and Colin. So Olivia actually has an incident where she accidentally burns down her apartment building and she needs a place to stay, so she ends up staying with her brother, but then turns out her brother is actually roommating what? Roommating with your roommate. What does that mean? What are you roommating with your roommate? But her brother is roommates with his best friend Colin, who is Olivia's enemy, and she doesn't find out until she's actually at the apartment, and she's like, oh holy shit, this is the guy that I've been hating for like years since I was a kid. They kind of have to share an apartment together, so it's kind of also roommates and forced proximity. And then Colin texts Olivia, but he doesn't realize that it's Olivia because he texts a wrong number, and then they form this like texting relationship, or not relationship, but like they end up being texting buddies, I guess. But the entire time Olivia doesn't know that it's Colin, but then Colin accidentally finds out that it's Olivia, and it's kind of this whole thing. Olivia is like major clumsy unlucky vibes, and it was funny. But the book in general, I didn't really see the chemistry between Colin and Olivia. I wasn't vibing the two characters together. Oddly enough, I found it to be a little bit cringe at times, a lot of the times, and I think it was mainly because of Olivia. I didn't mind the book though, because the writing was super easy to read, and it was just a quick, fun, easy read where you don't have doesn't require any brain power at all. But it wasn't my favorite Lynn Painter book, but I did rate this one 3 stars. And the last book that I read in June was Love in Other Words by Christina, which this book cover is probably one of my favorite book covers I have ever owned. It is so stunning. If I was a book, the cover would look like this basically, except maybe instead of pink it would be like lavender. This is a childhood friends to lovers and second chance romance. We get a then and now perspective. I wish this was dual POV though, because if it was dual POV I think I would have loved this even more. But we follow Elliot and Macy. They met when they were kids because Macy and her dad had this like weekend house which was like neighbors with Elliot and his family, and they became besties. And one of my favorite things about this book was that Elliot and Macy were huge bookworms. Like they would constantly hang out together every time they were together and have like their own little home library, and they would just sit there and read together. They have this like little tradition where every time they see each other they ask each other what their favorite word is. Probably explains why it's called Love in Other Words. Their relationship and friendship when they were kids were just so sweet. And then you get the now perspective, like 11 years has gone by and they haven't had any contact from each other, and they have this massive fallout which you find out later on in the book. I honestly really enjoyed this book. I really like the writing in this book. Elliot is one of my favorite book boyfriends, and I was honestly very hesitant picking this book up, even though I was like 50-50, because everyone compares Every Summer After and Love in Other Words together, and I really wasn't a huge fan of Every Summer After because of like the plot twist towards the end. I wasn't really vibing with that, but this book I really enjoyed. This book was just so cozy and the relationship was just so sweet. I love that the main characters were huge bookworms and would talk about books all the time and would just hang out reading together. And then when they actually bump into each other again the second time around, like 11 years later, and seeing their relationship rekindle again, I just loved everything about this book. It was just such a good romance read, super easy to read, also had a lot of emotional depth to it as well. I ended up rating this one 4.5 stars. Anyways, that concludes my June reading wrap up. I feel like I finished filming this video super quick because there were only 4 books to talk about, and initially I was like, I don't know if I should maybe even film a June reading wrap up, but I wanted to talk about the books that I read this month because I did find some really good ones. Like my lowest rated book was literally 3 stars, so I call that a win. But let me know if you read any of the books that I mentioned and what your favorite book that you read in June was. And if you enjoyed watching this video, please give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel down below. I post new videos every single week. Also, if you're wondering, no, I am not filming a July TBR. Like TBR chart picks my reads for the month of July because I am going on vacation, so I don't think I'll be doing too much reading, and also I am wanting to pick out my own books for that. I'll probably film like a YouTube shorts kind of going through my July TBR like / vacation TBR, but I thought I'd just mention that just in case any of you guys were wondering. No, I will not be doing a dedicated July TBR jar picks my reads for the month. And with that all being said, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!